Aloha and welcome to Outside Hawaii. I'm Catherine Nichols. Today, we'll learn more about corals in the Marshall Islands and at the Waikiki Aquarium. We'll also prepare a fabulous meal with Chef Miles at the Outrigger Waikoloa Beach Resort. And finally, to work off all those calories, we'll give you a few tips for starting your own running program. Please stay with us. On a recent trip to the Marshall Islands, we had the opportunity to dive with Satoshi Yoshii and his girlfriend Kuni in a spot she is credited with discovering, Kuni's Coral Garden. With his partner Fabio, Satoshi guides visitors through the waters off Majuro, Bikini, and other atolls via Marshall's Dive Adventures. The shallow depth allowed us to enjoy the colorful scenery for an entire hour. Before our Majuro adventure, we visited with marine biologist and coral expert Charles Del Bake at the Waikiki Aquarium to learn more about the different kinds of corals we would see.
Well, the table corals are mainly in the genus Acropora, and these are commonly known as table corals or staghorn corals when they grow in a branching form. And they can grow quite rapidly. They can grow at several inches a year in growth and can get quite large. So a large table Acropora is not necessarily an old one, but in all likelihood they're several decades old. The other interesting thing about these table corals is that they're like little miniature cities. There's all kinds of shrimp and crabs and fish that make their homes in these table Acropora, so it's almost like a miniature ecosystem. There also you'll find a lot of coral-eating butterfly fish around the table Acropora because it's one of their more favorite foods.
Charles said that he has seen table corals grow as large as 9 feet across, which seems to be the upper limit before they become too heavy and break. Coral needs light to grow, but it also needs moisture, which is why growth ceases at the ocean's surface. When exposed to direct sunlight, some species will produce a thick slime to retain moisture, but most will eventually dry out. This is why it's rare to find coral visibly above the waterline. Obviously, coral prospers in shallow waters, but we asked Charles why corals are also found at greater depths.
Well, even at 40 and 50 feet, there's still quite a bit of light. The lower light depth for corals like that, stony corals that have these symbiotic algae that live in them, is about 100 feet or so, or maybe a little bit deeper. It depends on the clarity of the water. So to us it may look dim, but to them there may be more than enough light. Plus they're really adaptable, so they can adapt to a wide range of light intensities. So if they grow at that level, then they're adapted to that level of light.
We also asked him about the role of symbiotic algae in coral survival.
Well, there's an algae that lives in the cells of the coral, and what that algae does, as most people might remember it from high school, photosynthesis. So they make sugars of food, basically. And the corals are evolved to the point where they can actually help the algae to release that sugar to the coral. So the coral actually uses that as a food source. A lot of people think they actually eat the algae, but they're not. They're not farming the algae. They're liberating the food that the algae is making for themselves. And in turn, the algae use carbon dioxide that the coral gives off, ammonia, which is a waste product from digestion of an animal. And so it's like a symbiotic relationship. Both partners benefit from this.
The algae helps remove waste from corals. Some scientists believe that its presence also facilitates the growth of giant clams because it aids in calcification. One of our favorite sights in the Marshalls was the Gorgonian fan coral.
A lot of people call the fan corals Gorgonians. In some cases, they're actually black corals. But when they look like a large fan like that with a mesh-like network, then they're mainly fan corals. And they often are found, mainly found in high flow areas. So you find them on sheer drop-offs and walls, especially in channels where there's good strong water flow, which carries food to these, because they don't have symbiotic algae, so they have to eat.
Since corals need light, space in shallow waters is often at a premium. In Darwinian style, several species have developed specialized tentacles for stinging or killing off other corals that threaten to grow over and block out their light. In the mid-1980s, the Waikiki Aquarium became the first to develop a successful coral propagation program. Today, it remains one of the leaders in this field. When Charles isn't conducting research at the aquarium or writing books, he is often diving. What kinds of corals attract him underwater?
What I look for in a coral when I see one, the first thing I look for is color. There's just so many beautiful colors of these South Pacific corals, iridescent greens, brilliant blues, and orange sometimes. It's just day-glow colors. I also like to look, especially on the table acroporas and the other type of staghorn corals, is the contrasting colors, because a lot of times they'll have brilliantly colored tips and then they'll have a different colored body. So the tip of the coral will be brilliant blue or green or yellow, and then the body might be brown or another color altogether. And then I also look at the shapes of the different types of corals. Some of them are very intricately shaped and very beautiful.
Charles also reminded us about the detrimental effects of human touch on coral. Diving gloves especially abrade coral tissues, which is why many dive operators tell their clients not to wear gloves. With repeated contact, the polyps don't open and eventually the coral dies. It's a reminder to all of us to use only our eyes when visiting the undersea world.